Greetings adventurers, and welcome to the Loot Goblin Marketplace. Sadly, for a lot of campaigns, the biggest opponent that you'll face at the table is not Strahd or Tiamat, but instead your Dungeon Master and their complete lack of communication skills. I'm a big believer that just about anyone can find a table that has what they're looking for in a D&D game, but there is no guarantee that your ideal table is the first one that you join. I'm not saying that you as the Dungeon Master should kick a player just because they don't seem to be enjoying a campaign as much as the rest of the table, but I am saying that if you really believe that the table isn't a fit for them, it is important to have that conversation. If the player is miserable or the Dungeon Master is angry that they're showing up each week, why wouldn't you want to fix that as quickly as possible? Either the player ends up leaving before things get nasty, or you guys resolve the issue and now have one more engaged person at the table. It seems like a win-win to me, but I guess for some Dungeon Masters, being passive-aggressive and punishing players in-game is how they do conflict resolution. I would hate to be at one of those tables. Today's treasure goes by the name Dungeon Master Acts Like a Mean Girl instead of just saying that I'm not a fit for their campaign. Today's video is brought to you by Chepeku. Even before I made this YouTube channel, I've been using their stuff for my games. They have made my campaign preparation so much easier. You may already support them on Patreon because they make fantastic maps, scenes, and tokens. But did you know that they're all available now for the price of 2 subscriptions in one single bundle? If you go to their website, use the link below to grab the complete fantasy bundle and get 6,000 battle maps, 2,000 fantasy scenes, and over 300 tokens that can be tweaked using their amazing token builder, meaning endless possibilities. You can put together just about any scenario using this bundle in minutes and treat your party to beautiful, hand-drawn assets that will blow them away. If you want to help support the channel, or you just want to use this amazing art on your screen for your next game, click the link in the description below and get the bundle today. Earlier this year, I was supposed to play in a campaign of Curse of Strahd, if the username was any indication. However, some drama got in the way of that, and in hindsight, it's pretty funny. So here I am to regale you the tale of how and why I didn't get to play Curse of Strahd. Some names for our players. DM is the Dungeon Master. Duh. Barb is short for Barbarian. Me and her played in a campaign together before. This info is important. Art is short for Artificer, another player who told me some additional details after the fact. And finally, Fiend. They're not a player but still on the D&D server and happened to hear some choice tidbits from DM. In the beginning, all was well. I was one of the first people DM asked to join. I hadn't played D&D since a previous group had fallen apart, so getting to play again was exciting. And it was gothic horror. Hell yeah. Sign me the F up. I was all ready and had the perfect character for the game, an Oathbreaker Paladin with an obsession with dark magic. I was so hyped to play her. However, before we get character sheets, the DM sends all us players consent forms. Now, I'm totally cool with consent forms, especially for something dark and gritty like Strahd. The first issue was that this was not Curse of Strahd specific in terms of content warnings. It was a general form that just had most of, if not all, the uncomfortable topics you could run into in a campaign. So not exactly a great start, but okay. The DM mentioned wanting to play this accurately and that it was not going to be a game for the faint of heart. That's fine. I love a spot of guts and gore in my gothic horror. One of our players dropped after hearing about how gritty and edgy this Curse of Strahd was going to be, and more power to her. This also means we had 4 players instead of 5, which was okay in my opinion, but the DM wanted to have a party of 5. Again, also not a problem. But then I get a message from the DM. Hey, can I add Barb in? Like, would you be comfy with that? See, Barb and I had a history, as I alluded to previously. So, of course, my dumbass goes, yeah, sure, I don't see the issue, because I was a massive people pleaser at the time. Still trying to break that habit, unfortunately. So far in the story, I feel like the player and the Dungeon Master are doing a pretty good job of communicating. I get that one person ended up leaving because they didn't want to deal with the blood and guts, but if that's the kind of campaign that the Dungeon Master wants to run, it's good to know it now. Unfortunately for the player, this person is leaving and now someone that they didn't really like in a previous campaign is joining. But at the very least, the Dungeon Master did ask if Barb can join. It seems like the author here was probably not comfortable with them joining, but they said yes anyways because they're a people pleaser. But so far, that really isn't on the Dungeon Master. He's doing everything that you'd want him to do so far, which is great for now, but obviously based off the title, things change. So let's see what happens. In reality, there was an issue. I hadn't spoken to Barb Barb since our old group dissolved, and all the drama that came with it. That's a different story though. In short, I was scared Barb hated me because we didn't leave off on good terms. Oh well, I could play with her in a campaign, it's fine. Everything is fine. Yeah, whatever you say, buddy. Another red flag in hindsight came in the form of the DM saying that there would be no leniency for my mental health getting in the way of sessions, and that they won't be pausing to let me decompress if I get overwhelmed. That's fine. I'm not expecting to be accommodated in every game I play in. I'll just have to deal. This is fine. Everything is fine. They did repeat this boundary of theirs multiple times to me, saying that they won't stop for me and that I'll have to manage, which I found a bit weird, but I know I can be forgetful at the best of times, so I figured the repetition was so I didn't forget by game time. Oh yeah, did I mention that we hadn't started the campaign yet? No, well the campaign never starts if you wanted an indication as to where this is going. The third strike was when I got a message from the DM. Hey, are you sure you're going to be okay in Strahd? Me. Yeah, why wouldn't I be? DM. Well, some players are worried about you. They don't think you're able to handle it. Me. No, I'm pretty sure I'll be fine. I know what I'm getting into. Me. By the way, who was worried? Oh, sweet saloon above. This was the worst thing to say. Anyway, DM. I can't say that. Me. What? Side note, they said it like they were under some non-existent NDA. I don't remember the exact words, but I do remember getting anxious and pestering them about it. To be fair, if it was another player that had an issue, foreshadowing, I'd like to talk it out with them. Let them know I'm going to be okay, so we don't go into a game on awkward footing. Okay, now we can see the signs that the Dungeon Master's communication is starting to fall apart. If you go up to a player and say, hey, another player has doubts that this is the right campaign for you, of course one of their first questions are going to be, who said that? I really want to play Curse of Strahd. You've asked me several times now. I don't know what they're telling you, but I'm really hyped to play this game. We went over a general consent form. I told you what I was comfortable with. You were very clear that there's going to be shocking moments, that you're not going to give me a moment to walk out of the room, decompress. It's a very serious campaign. It's a very bloody campaign. It's a very serious Curse of Strahd campaign. We get it. It seems like this author maybe had a little bit of a reputation that the Dungeon Master's aware of, especially now that Barb has talked about it. But if you invited the author, you've asked them several times if they're comfortable with Curse of Strahd, they're going to keep saying yes, even if you ask it 20 different ways. If you have a problem with the author, you just have to come out and say it. Let's see how it's handled in the story. Eventually, the DM confessed that it was Barb who was concerned, and they were even so gracious as to offer to mediate the conversation while Barb and I sort our campaign concerns out with each other. I should note, I thought the issue was that I wouldn't be able to handle the content of the campaign. I only have a couple of squicks. Remember this for later actually, so it should be no problem. I just had to look up what that word meant. A squick is kind of like a ick, but instead of it being mild, it's like much stronger. It makes you almost squeamish, so you like squirm and ick. I feel like in most stories, I just hear people say like, oh yeah, this was a trigger for me. Okay, vocab segment over, let's jump back to the story. And I said as much in the group chat DM made for Barb and I. The content was not the problem. Now, while I can't recite the whole rant Barb went on for guideline's sake, I can give you lovely readers the skinny. Basically, Barb said how much of a terrible player and person I was, how I hogged the spotlight, and how I couldn't handle our previous campaign, let alone Curse of Strahd. And also, she didn't want to see me ruin this game too, or hurt her friends any further. The friends in question are our mutual friends. Friends that I'm still good friends with, believe it or not. It was bad to say the least. Luckily for me, the mental preparation for the campaign came in handy after all. I managed to stay calm enough to defend myself from the bad player allegations and tell her to F off in regards to the previous campaign that fell apart. However, my strength didn't last long. I asked the DM in direct messages if they thought I would last. I got the most plastic polite "no sorry" I have ever read and decided to drop the campaign. Too tired of this shit to care about what I was missing out on. That's it. That's the end, right? But wait, there's more. There's still 2 whole characters to introduce. I will say good on the author for just dropping the campaign right there. It seems like the DM has questioned the author's willingness to play this campaign campaign about 20 times now. They make it sound like they're going to mediate the argument between you and Barb, but it kind of seems like they just let Barb have full reign, tearing into you over and over again. And now that you've been beaten down a little bit, you reach out to the Dungeon Master and say, hey, Barb doesn't think I'm going to make it, but you do, right? They go, lol, no. That's honestly pretty brutal. It feels like that's probably what they thought all along, but they've asked over and over again, hoping that you'd come to that conclusion yourself. If that's what they truly believed, they shouldn't have brought Barb into it. They should have just said, look, I like you as a person, we'll hang out for other stuff. Based on how other campaigns have gone that you've been in, I don't think this is going to be fun for you. And that would probably suck a lot to hear, but it's a lot better than how they're approaching it now. But now ultimately the Dungeon Master did get what they wanted because you are leaving the campaign, but still somehow more drama happens. So let's see what it is. So some time passes and I'm recounting the above to some friends, Art and Fiend, and the two of them join in with some details I hadn't known before. Art was another player, and they had told me that the DM had, around the time they messaged me Strike 3, asked them if I would last a session. That was the DM's words. They later informed me that the DM had asked all the other players that question, and the DM pressured Barb into her insane effing rant in my general direction. Holy shit, if they didn't want me as a player, that is so unnecessarily complex. Way to make a worse situation by trying to avoid a mildly uncomfortable chat. Yeah, that's an understatement. Then Fiend chimed in, and oh boy, remember when I said I only had a couple squicks, which as you remember are like triggers? One of these squicks is discussions of pregnancy. Oddly specific, I didn't expect it to come up, but I made sure the Dungeon Master knew about it when we got the consent forms. Apparently, according to Fiend, the DM had offhandedly mentioned that we could have gotten a good ending if I didn't have a squick about it. The good ending in question was to give Strahd an heir by impregnating one of the player characters. Art's player character was the other option, according to the DM, and Art was heavily against that too, but for unrelated reasons that are not mine to discuss. Then there was the plan to kill my character, less a plan and more an expectation that my player character would die. Fiend explained that this optional murder house side quest was going to stress test the team and pick off the weak players, one of which was predicted to be my paladin. The DM thought my player character would have been too stupid to survive, based on some jokes I made about her previously. The DM, as far as I could tell, just didn't like my choice of player character, and instead of talking to me about it like a normal human being, devised a stress test quest to kill my character off and force me to use my backup. DM, after I told them that I'm dropping Curse of Strahd, offered to run a one-on-one game for me as a consolation. I turned that down too. Anyways, that's the end for reals. Thank you for reading. TLDR, my Dungeon Master refused to communicate with me normally, instead opted to play social circle chess to oust me from the campaign. You know, as much as I don't like giving out spoilers for stuff like Curse of Strahd or just popular campaign settings, Strahd kind of already has someone he's obsessed with. I get that a paladin and vampire make a pretty spicy fanfiction, but there's someone in the module he's already trying to sleep with. I don't really know if you can call it a good ending where Strahd ends up with any girl in that story. Somehow the consent forms are one of the major problems with this story. It seems like the DM here really wanted to have a pregnancy storyline for Strahd for some reason, and he was just heartbroken when all the female PCs just checked off that they don't want to deal with pregnancy in the story. I really do think you dodged a bullet here. I always feel like it's a bad sign when the Dungeon Master says this is going to be Curse of Strahd, but like not those lame ones. It's going to be like an intense, dark Curse of Strahd. It's like, dude, it's already gothic horror. The fact that you're emphasizing it this much is good for communication, but does make me concerned. It seemed like early on this Dungeon Master actually was pretty good with communication, but apparently he was leaving a ton of stuff out. Like, for example, he hated your paladin character for some reason. Maybe it's partially because he thinks paladins are busted or feels like they're really strong in Curse of Strahd specifically, but instead of being open and honest about that, he was just going to kill off your character and try to get you to roll your backup, which he probably considered more balanced or just more interesting. They never communicate why they hate this character so much, but the fact that they're just openly talking about it in the Discord that they're going to kill your character, but then won't bring that up to you, does show that the Dungeon Master's communication communication skills are severely lacking. The campaign hasn't even started yet. If you hate the character that much and you're designing a dungeon to kill them off, that seems like such a waste of time when you can just talk to them and say, hey, here are my concerns. Could you consider playing another character? I am really glad that you quit this campaign before it began, and I guess luckily for the other 4 players, it never happened either. I mean, technically there's always the chance that his take on Curse of Strahd was going to be super refreshing and grimdark somehow, and the Strahd romance into pregnancy arc was going to be fire. I want to hear what you guys think in the comments. I'd really appreciate it if you liked and hyped the video, as it really helps the channel grow, and subscribe if you aren't already. I really appreciate you guys stopping by as always, and I hope to see you in the next video. Farewell for now.